Hey guys and welcome. My name is Misty Koss. I'm going to be teaching you how to paint this lovely forest scene tonight. Sasquatch is optional. I will be using Arteza paints, green, yellow, blue, white, black, and red, and 3 sizes of brushes which are pictured. Hopefully you can see my 16 by 20 canvas. If you don't have that, you can use something different. What I'm going to do is going to take a little bit of Mars Black. I'm going to put it on my palette. So I'm going to take my big brush, which is a size 10 Creative Colors brush. And I'm going to start at the top of my canvas. And I'm going to use enough of paint to glide smoothly across my canvas. Now, this black I'm not quite a fan of. This is Arteza's black, but it's what I have, so that's what I'm using. If it's not solid black, you could always go over it with a second coat or add a little bit of blue into it. I do like their paints though. For the most part, they are pretty affordable. They also accept Afterpay, which is nice. So if you're a starving artist or you can't necessarily afford art supplies, it's a really nice option. It's got a little bit of black on there. I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo blue. Hopefully you can see that. To my brush, or to my palette. I'm going to go in. I'm going to take that phthalo blue up into my black. You want to work quickly. You don't want your black to dry. You can even take it up into the black. You want to make sure you're covering your canvas completely so you don't have any of that, see those little white things that are left in there because your brush got dry. You don't want to see that. We're just going to add maybe about 2 inches of the blue, or however much you want. I'm using long brush strokes. I'm blending back and forth. So the way I blend to get it perfectly blended into the black, I take my brush from my blue into my black, back down into my blue. If you get some brush strokes, just leave it. You can always go over it if you don't like how it looks. If you want brush strokes, leave them in there. Add more if you want to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some crimson red. I'm going to put it beside my blue. And I'm just going to mix it maybe half and half to create a purple. You can use pretty much any red or any blue you have. It will just create a different type of purple. So if you have a more red or more orange red, it's going to create a different type of purple. Might be more of a browny purple. Let's test this and see if I like it. I might add a little bit more blue. It's okay if you can't make it. You don't even have to use purple. You could do this as a sunset. So I'm just going to blend that in there. Blend it up just a little bit to create my night sky. And if you want to, make sure you're painting the sides for a finished look. I like to paint my sides that way when I go to display it or take it to a gallery. That way it's finished. I don't have to frame it. I don't have to worry about it. You can blend it in If you add too much purple, you could always add more blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of white now to my purple. And I'm just gonna take it on my brush, half and half. To lighten it up a little bit. You could mix it together if you wanted to. I'm just gonna mix it on the canvas. We're gonna take that purple all the way down to the bottom. You wanna make sure this is nice and smooth too. That way it'll dry nicer for you. We have big old wads of paint and it's gonna take longer to dry. You want this to be nice and easy to dry. Maybe you don't, I don't know. If you want to go crazy on the background, go crazy on the background. That's going to take you longer in between steps to dry. So you can pause the video when it's done and go on to the other steps when you need to. Sometimes I forget to do the bottom and the sides, and then I get done and I'm like, I threw all my paint away. Make sure you're doing it now so you don't forget. You don't have to do this standing up like I am. Do it flat if you need to. Do whatever you're comfortable with. Just make sure that your canvas is straight, because if you're leaning, then your horizon's gonna lean. So the top is already starting to dry. It usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how thick you've painted your piece and what type of paint you're using. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dry it, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so once your background is dry, and it has to be dry to the touch, usually you can tell if it's dry, if it's no longer glossy or sparkly looking anymore, we're going to trace our moon in. It's going to be a little tricky for me right now because I don't have my stand with me. So I'm going to try to do this. You can use a paper plate or whatever is round. I'm going to use this bowl that I made. This is from my pottery class at SVSU. I'm going to take a paint marker. You could take charcoal or chalk, and I'm just going to trace around to get a circle. If you can make a circle yourself, go right ahead and do that. I'm just doing that to show you one way you can do this. And I'm using an Arteza art marker. These are nice. You can actually switch out the tips on those, and that's pretty nice once they get frayed. Okay, I'm gonna pick this up, and I got a circle. So now we have our moon, which is nice. Should be nice and circular, or the best circle that you can do. I'm going to get my white paint, some clean water, And I'm going to make a white at a probably kind of like a coffee creamer consistency, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Okay, so I'm taking my white. I'm gonna find a palette real quick. Okay, so we have our circle, and I want to get my white, which is my titanium white, and I'm gonna find whatever I have paint palette wise. This is a container that I got that I kept as like, this might be good for paint mixing or watercolor, so I love this. I'm gonna put in maybe about a pea size of paint. You don't have to do this step if you actually have like craft paint that's liquidy. I do not. And the key is you want clean water to do this. I'm using my dirty water because I'm too lazy to go to my sink right now. But if your water is tinted, then your white will be tinted. So what I'm gonna do is I added a little water in there. I'm gonna mix it together. And see how it's a liquid consistency. I wanna make sure it's all nice and mixed up there, no chunks. It looks kind of like coffee creamer, half and half. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my smaller brush, whatever brush I have. You could use a toothbrush. Some people use, I'm using what I have right now. And I'm going to, outside of the circle, not inside, I'm gonna use my 2 fingers. And I'm gonna start tapping, whoop, too much. Tapping on my brush. Now if you get like that, like I did, you can just wipe it off if you want to. I'm gonna keep it. Do this on a surface that you don't care about, maybe put some newspaper underneath. It's okay if a little bit gets inside your moon because we're painting that over with white. I'm not gonna go all the way to the bottom. I'm just doing the top part. You could also do this, hopefully you can see it, using my fingers and flicking. That's also effective for filling in space for stars. This will be our cosmos up here. It starts to get dry. Brush it off a little bit. We want some splotches over here. You could even take a small brush or the back side of a small brush. I'll try it 2 different ways. This is the one that I have right now. You can dot if you want to. I wouldn't do this with the liquidy. I would do this with the regular white. Taking the back of my brush first. You can do it that way. Just dot it. Remember to clean off the back of your brush so you don't want to get it all over your hand. You can make traditional dot stars like that. You could do it with the front of the brush. You could even paint it in. I'm gonna do a little like that. Okay, so I've washed off my big brush, and I'm going to get myself some white, and I'm gonna fill in this big area of the moon. You could do it in yellow if you wanted to. I'm gonna do it in white. If it's transparent or see-through, first time around, that's okay. You can always add a second layer. If you want a bright white moon, You can also use yellow and white if you want to. If you want a warmer moon. You can see I kind of had a little of the purple left over in my brush, and that's okay. It kind of gives it a kind of cool look to it. If you need to, you can't get straight up into this line, you can take a angled brush too, or a smaller brush to get in there. And I'm using my brush strokes in the direction of the moon, so I'm going around and in. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to take a little bit of black, a very little bit of black, maybe about the size of a pencil tip, and mix it in with my white. I'm going to start adding some details to the moon while it's still wet. I'm going to make a light gray, like that. And what I'll do is you can look at a picture of a moon. I'm not going to, I'm just going to make it up as I go. I'm just going to dab in some gray here. With my big brush, maybe a little bit here. Maybe a little over here. I'll take a little bit of darker gray, going towards the edge. So I'm going to take some of my phthalo green, mix it in with my little bit of my white. I'm going to take a little bit of water and mix it in to make it a little bit more manageable to mix. You want to mix a nice solid green color, just like that. Okay, so I'm going to take my fan brush now, and I'm going to dip it into my green color I just made. And to make our first tree, I'm going to start in here just a little bit. I'm going to poke. And then I'm going to take my brush and move it side to side. Just like that. Now you can use whatever brush you have. If you don't have a fan brush, you can use an angled brush. That makes a nice one too. I'm going to take it all the way across, and I'm going to make different size trees so they can be shorter, taller. Oh, and I got a little bit of that there. That's okay. We're going to cover that. Make this shorter here. Might make that one a little taller. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna take my phthalo, hopefully you can see that, my yellow, my white, and I'm gonna mix them together to create a lighter green. I'm gonna add a dab of red in there to get rid of the greenness. Don't want it to be so green. Just a dab though, not a whole lot. You can use a different color green if you want to. What we're gonna do with that green is we're gonna make more trees. And we wanna make sure that our background is completely dry before we go and do those trees on top. And I've cleaned off my fan brush. I'm gonna go do the same thing. I'm gonna dip my brush in. So now we're gonna go in and we're gonna take our fan brush. We're gonna choose a place to start making our lighter trees. If it's not light enough, you can add more yellow or more white. All right, what I'm gonna do now is I have that fallow that I have mixed up, and I'm gonna make sure that the shoreline's really dry. I'm gonna put some blue in my green, just like that. I'm gonna mix it together to make a nice teal color, hopefully. Then I might add a little bit of white to it. Again, if it doesn't mix real great, just add a little bit of water to break it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have a little bit of white, and a little bit of that teal in my brush. I'm just going to fill in the water part. It's okay if there's blue streaks in there, white streaks. I'm going to fill in from here and hopefully not knock that over. Just like that. Take it on the sides too, don't forget. And the bottom. So my top should be dry. I'm going to flip it over. Okay, so now we've got our water. Should be pretty dry. I'm going to take some white, and it's okay if there's teal mixed into it. I'm going to take my big brush, I'm going to wipe it off on my, whatever I'm using, my palette. I'm going to make a moon reflection in the water. And I'm just going to go start small and move back and forth in the water. Just like that. And the way I'm doing is I'm doing it this way with my brush. So it's going to be wide, going this way. I might add a little bit more. This time I'm going to use the skinny side horizontally. I'm going to wipe my brush off just a little bit. Just like that. And you could add reflections over here if you wanted to. If you don't like it, you can take a little bit of water and just wipe it off a little bit. Just gonna lightly go in. I don't want to add too much. Now I'm making sure I wipe my brush off so there's almost not any paint on my brush. That way you don't get those white streaks on it. I'm just going to add a little bit of blue here. I don't like the way that black looked. If you have too much white, you can always go back in with your blue to mix it up a little bit. If you wanted to, you could bring a reflection of the trees you made into the water. You don't have to. You could add rocks if you wanted to. If you wanted to add a rocky shoreline. Let me clean my brush off. I'll use my angled brush to show you how to do that. I use a little bit of black. I might go in. Just add a little bit of rocks over here. Just like that. Okay, so I've mixed together red, yellow, and green to make a brown, but you could have a brown, use your brown at home. And I'll wipe my brush off on my palette for most of it to take most of it off my brush. You don't have to do this, I'm just gonna do it. And I'm just gonna lightly add in a shoreline right here in brown. It doesn't have to be perfect. I add in just like that. And I'm using my brush horizontally like this to get those top parts. Remember, the most important thing to do is wipe your brush off to get it this light. You want almost no paint on your brush. Once you get all the details in there and you've fixed up some of the things that you screwed up, you can let it dry and sign it in the corner with a paint marker or a detail brush. I like to add my signature in the right hand corner with a lighter paint. Once it's dried 24 hours, I like to spray it down with a matte semi-gloss or glossy spray paint just to protect it. You could even seal it with a Mod Podge. Let it dry and it's ready to hang. Thanks guys for painting with me.